Good evening. Welcome to our third story in the Shire Chronicles, Shadows of Wrenhold. Let's begin. The archive trembled around them, the faint vibrations of the crash echoing through its stone walls. Dust drifted from the rafters, catching the dim light of Cyrana's flickering lantern. Orlen clutched the ring in his pocket, its warmth pulsing faintly against his palm. Adric stood at his side, gripping his staff with a white-knuckled hand, while Cyrana peered into the shadows near the entryway, her sharp eyes scanning for movement. "We can't stay here," she said, her voice low and steady. "There's another way out." The three moved quickly through the narrow aisles of bookshelves, the weight of the air pressing against their backs as though urging them forward. Orlen glanced behind him, half expecting to see the shadowy figure from the doorway surging after them, but the hall remained still. Even so, the cold, unnatural sense of its presence lingered. "This way," Cyrana said, leading them toward a spiral staircase that descended into the lower levels of the archive. Her blade remained in her hand, its polished edge catching the faint glow of her lantern. "Where does this lead?" Adric asked, his tone both curious and wary. "To the catacombs," Cyrana replied, not slowing her pace. "They haven't been used in years, but there's a passage that opens into the lower part of the city." "Catacombs?" Orlen repeated, his unease growing. The thought of venturing into dark, forgotten tunnels beneath the ground wasn't comforting, but neither was staying to face whatever had entered the archive. They descended the staircase, their footsteps echoing in the narrow stone shaft. The air grew cooler with each step, and the scent of damp earth and old parchment gave way to something heavier, an ancient, musty odor that spoke of long forgotten places. At the bottom of the stairs, Cyrana paused to catch her breath, holding the lantern high to illuminate the space. Rows of stone arches stretched into the darkness, their surfaces covered in faded carvings. Shelves of crumbling scrolls and empty alcoves hinted at the catacombs' original purpose, though the years had stripped much of it away. "This way," Cyrana said again, her voice echoing softly. She led them through the maze of arches and tunnels, each turn blurring into the next, until Orlen lost track of where they had come from. He clutched his satchel tightly, the weight of the stone and the ring inside it a constant reminder of the danger they carried. Adric walked close beside him, his staff tapping softly against the stone floor. The silence of the catacombs was oppressive, broken only by their footsteps and the occasional drip of water from the ceiling. Orlen's mind raced as they moved. "That thing," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "What was it?" Cyrana glanced back at him, her expression unreadable. "A shadow," she said simply. "An echo of something that shouldn't exist anymore." "That's not an answer," Adric said, his tone sharper than usual. Cyrana's gaze hardened, though she didn't slow her pace. "If I had all the answers, I wouldn't be running from it." Orlen and Adric exchanged a glance but said nothing more. They continued through the labyrinth of tunnels, the light from Cyrana's lantern casting long, shifting shadows on the walls. At times, Orlen thought he heard faint whispers just beyond the edge of his hearing, but every time he stopped to listen, the sound vanished. He shook his head, trying to push the thought away. "We're almost there," Cyrana said after what felt like hours. She stopped in front of a heavy wooden door set into the stone wall, its surface reinforced with rusted iron bands. She placed her hand against the door, her fingers brushing the faint outline of a carved symbol near the latch. The door groaned as she pushed it open, revealing a narrow tunnel sloping upward. "This will take us to the outer districts," she said, stepping inside. "From there, we can find shelter." As they entered the tunnel, the oppressive air of the catacombs began to lift. replaced by a faint breeze carrying the scents of the city above. Orlen let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding, though his unease didn't fade entirely. "Do you think it followed us?" he asked, glancing back toward the darkened passages behind them. "If it did, we'll know soon enough," Cyrana replied, her voice grim. They moved quickly through the upward-sloping tunnel, the sound of the city growing louder with each step. At last they emerged into a narrow alley between two stone buildings, the sky above them dark and star-strewn. The bustle of Wrenhold's evening market echoed faintly from the main street nearby, a strange contrast to the silence they had just left behind. Cyrana extinguished the lantern and turned to face them. "We'll find a safe house in the lower quarter," she said. "There's much to discuss, and we need to plan our next move." Orlen nodded, though the weight of what lay ahead pressed heavily on his mind. The catacombs might have been behind them, but the shadow that had driven them there felt far from gone. The streets of Wrenhold were alive with sound and movement as Orlen, Adric, and Cyrana emerged from the alley. Lanterns flickered in the cool evening air, their light reflecting off cobblestone streets wet from a recent rain. Vendors called out from market stalls, their voices blending with the chatter of townsfolk and the occasional clatter of hooves against stone. To Orlen, the city felt overwhelming, its bustle a stark contrast to the quiet familiarity of Greenhill Vale. He kept close to Adric and Cyrana as they made their way through the winding streets, their footsteps quick but unhurried. "We'll go to the safe house," Cyrana said in a low voice, her eyes scanning the crowd. "It's not far, but we need to stay alert." Orlen nodded, his gaze darting nervously to the shadows between the buildings. The memory of the shadowy figure in the archive lingered in his mind, its cold presence still fresh. "Do you think it's still following us?" he asked, his voice barely audible over the noise of the market. Cyrana didn't answer immediately. She led them down a narrow side street, where the sounds of the market began to fade. "I don't know," she admitted finally, "but it would be foolish to assume we're safe." Adric frowned, his grip tightening on his staff. "What exactly are we dealing with, Cyrana? That thing, it wasn't just some wandering spirit." Cyrana glanced over her shoulder, her expression unreadable. "No, it wasn't. Shadows like that are tied to the relics, drawn to their power, or perhaps bound to protect it. Either way, we can't afford to linger." They turned another corner, the buildings around them growing older and more weathered. Cyrana stopped in front of a nondescript wooden door set into the side of a stone structure. She rapped on it twice, then paused before knocking once more. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit interior. A tall man with sharp features and a wary expression stood in the doorway, his hand resting on the hilt of a dagger at his side. "Cyrana," he said, his voice cautious. "You're late." "And I'm not alone," Cyrana replied, stepping inside. The man's gaze shifted to Orlen and Adric, his eyes narrowing slightly before he stepped aside to let them in. The safe house was sparse but sturdy, its walls lined with shelves filled with books, maps, and various trinkets. A small fire crackled in the hearth, casting a warm glow over the room. "This is Elias," Cyrana said, gesturing to the man who had let them in. "He's an old friend, and someone who can be trusted." Elias inclined his head slightly, though his expression remained guarded. "I hope you know what you're doing, bringing strangers here," he said. Cyrana gave him a pointed look. "I wouldn't have come if it weren't necessary." She turned to Orlen and Adric. "Sit. We have much to discuss." Orlen lowered himself onto a wooden bench near the fire, his satchel resting on his lap. The warmth of the flames was comforting, but the tension in the room was palpable. Cyrana pulled a chair closer to the hearth, her gaze fixed on Orlen. The ring and the stone. May I see them again? Orlen hesitated before nodding, carefully pulling the objects from his satchel and placing them on the table between them. The ring's dark metal surface glinted in the firelight, its etched runes faint but distinct. The stone, though unassuming at first glance, seemed to hum faintly as it rested beside the ring. Elias stepped closer, his curiosity piqued. "What are these?" he asked, his voice low. Cyrana didn't look up. "Relics," she said, simply done. "Tied to the keepers of the hidden paths." Elias's expression darkened. "The keepers? I thought they were just a myth." "They're not," Cyrana replied, "and these relics are proof of that, but their presence here raises questions. Dangerous ones." Adric leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees. "We need answers, Cyrana. What do these relics do? Why are they so important?" Cyrana sighed, her fingers tracing the edge of the stone. "The keepers created these relics to safeguard knowledge and power, things they believed were too dangerous to be left unguarded. The ring and the stone are part of a set, each piece tied to the others. Together they form a kind of key, a key to something ancient and hidden." "Hidden where?" Orlen asked, his voice tinged with unease. Cyrana shook her head. "That, I don't know, but the keepers were meticulous. If these relics have surfaced now, it means their secrets are no longer secure." Elias crossed his arms, his expression grim. "And you think that shadow from the archive was after these?" Cyrana nodded. "It's possible. Shadows like that are remnants, fragments of something older, bound to the relics in ways we don't fully understand. They're drawn to their power, and they don't stop until they've claimed it." The room fell silent, the weight of Cyrana's words settling over them. Orlen stared at the ring and the stone, their faint glow reflecting in his eyes. "What do we do now?" he asked quietly. Cyrana leaned back in her chair, her gaze distant. "For now, we stay hidden. We'll need to move soon, but first, I need time to study these relics. If we're to understand what we're dealing with, we can't afford to rush." Adric nodded, though his expression remained tense. "And if the shadow finds us here?" Cyrana's eyes hardened. "Then we'll be ready." The hours passed in tense silence, the crackling of the fire the only sound in the safe house. Orlen sat by the hearth, his thoughts a tangled web of unease and questions. Across the room, Cyrana worked quietly at a small desk, her fingers brushing over the ring and stone as she compared them to a series of old, worn texts. Adric leaned against the wall, his staff resting beside him, his eyes scanning the dimly lit space for any sign of movement. Elias moved through the room with practiced precision, checking the locks on the doors and windows, his expression unreadable. "The relics hold more power than I realized," Cyrana said finally, her voice breaking the stillness. She turned to face the others, her face pale but resolute. "This ring isn't just part of a key. It's a catalyst. It amplifies the will and intent of its wielder for good or ill." Orlen frowned, the weight of the ring's potential pressing down on him. "What does that mean for us?" he asked quietly. Cyrana hesitated, her gaze fixed on the objects before her. "It means we're in more danger than I thought. If the shadow is drawn to the relics, then others will be too. The power they represent is too great to ignore." Adric pushed off the wall, his expression grim. "Then we can't stay here. If we're being hunted, it's only a matter of time before this safe house becomes a trap." Elias nodded in agreement, his hand resting on the hilt of his dagger. "He's right. Wrenhold is no longer safe, especially if word of these relics spreads." Cyrana sighed. her fingers tracing the edges of the ring. Leaving won't be easy. The shadow's presence complicates things. It can track the relics, maybe even sense them from a distance. We'll need to move carefully. Orlen shifted uneasily in his seat, his hand brushing against the satchel at his side. The stone and the ring felt heavier now, their presence a constant reminder of the burden they carried. "Where would we even go?" he asked. "If the shadow can follow us, is anywhere truly safe?" Cyrana met his gaze, her expression firm. "There are places the shadow cannot reach, ancient places hidden by the keepers. If we can find one, we might have a chance to learn more without interference." Elias crossed his arms, his brow furrowed. "And how do you propose we find such a place? The keeper's secrets have been buried for centuries." Cyrana opened one of the books on the desk, its pages filled with faded maps and notes in a language Orlen couldn't read. "I've been piecing together fragments of their network for years," she said. "There's a location in the southern hills, a sanctuary, if the texts are accurate. It's our best chance." Adric frowned, his skepticism evident. "And what if the texts are wrong? What if it's nothing more than ruins?" Cyrana's expression hardened. "Then we'll adapt. But staying here isn't an option." A knock at the door shattered the conversation, the sound sharp and unexpected. Everyone froze, their eyes darting to the entrance. Elias moved swiftly, his dagger drawn as he pressed his ear to the wood. "Who's there?" he called, his voice low but commanding. No answer came. Only the faint sound of footsteps retreating into the night. Cyrana's hand tightened around the ring, her knuckles white. "It's here," she whispered. "The shadow." Orlen felt his heart pound in his chest as the air in the room grew colder, the faint scent of damp earth seeping through the cracks in the walls. Adric grabbed his staff, positioning himself near the door. "If it's come for the relics, we can't let it have them." The fire in the hearth flickered violently, the flames dimming as a low, resonant hum filled the air. Orlen felt the ring grow warm in his pocket, its presence pulsing with an almost living energy. Cyrana moved to the center of the room, her blade glinting in the faint light. "We hold our ground," she said firmly. "This safe house was built to withstand intrusions. We use that to our advantage." Elias positioned himself near the back door, his movements deliberate and calm. "If it breaches the front, I'll cover the exit. Get the relics out of here if you must." The hum grew louder, the walls of the safe house trembling slightly. Orlen's breath quickened as a dark shape appeared outside the window, its form shifting and indistinct. The shadow was unlike anything he had ever seen, its presence radiating cold and malice. Cyrana raised her blade, her eyes locked on the figure. "Whatever happens, stay close," she said, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. The door shuddered violently, the wood splintering under an unseen force. Adric stepped forward, his staff glowing faintly as he muttered something under his breath. A barrier of light appeared across the entrance, holding the shadow at bay. For now. Orlen clutched his satchel tightly, his mind racing. The ring's warmth seemed to seep into his very being, filling him with a strange mix of fear and resolve. "What do we do?" he asked, his voice barely audible. Cyrana glanced at him, her expression unyielding. "We fight,"